God is not done with you yet. Say amen. Thank you. Now what I want you to consider is this. It doesn't matter what age you are. God's not done with you yet. And we need to realize how important that is, because it demonstrates to you and me how much you are loved. If you take Isaiah 41:10, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Now you may take that as a little bit of prophecy for the New Testament. And the reason I say that is I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. In the New Testament, where is Christ sitting? At the right hand of God. So it's kind of prophetic, saying that there's going to be someone that's going to help us through life if we just allow him to do so. Psalm 94:19, when anxiety was great within me, your consolation brought joy to my soul. It seems like people are struggling with anxiety more and more all the time. I don't know if that's true, but it just seems like it. And most of them know when their anxiety is going to start building up. And I have a couple of techniques I give to people. But the one thing most is I said, have you ever sat down and prayed to God to help you with this? If not, do so. And do it constantly. Because that's what we're supposed to do. See, the thing that society says is a lie. And that lie is pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. That's a lie. And the reason is you're actually saying that there's no one to help you. There is no God when you say that. Because you are the one trying to pull yourself up. And I can tell you, in 31 years of ministry, if I didn't have God to pull myself up with, I would have failed. If I didn't have God to help me now with the disease I have, I wouldn't make it. See, this is where we make the mistake. We are frightened to let God be in control. We are frightened to let God be in control. And part of it is a little bit to how we are living. Some people will tell me, I said this recently too, but it just boggles my brain. When they say, the reason I can't come to church, Pastor, if God only knew. I think I roll my eyes every time they do that. Seriously? You're seriously not coming to church because you think God doesn't know? Of course he does. Of course he knows. Of course he understands what you've done. But here's the deal, and we need to remember this. No matter what, God still loves us. No matter what, that love gives us an eternity. Acronym for love. Love offers various eternities. So if you stick with Christ, you have a wonderful eternity. If you don't, well, let's put it this way, I won't see you later on. Revelations 1:17. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. And that's Christ. So if he is the first and the last, then let's don't worry about the last. That's when he's supposed to come again. Because if you worry about when Jesus is going to come, you're not going to live. You're not going to live a full life. And by the way, quit coming and thinking, oh, I wonder if he's going to come in my lifetime. I wonder if he's going to come here. I wonder if... It doesn't matter. You will not know the time or the place. I will come as a thief in the night. Well, if you think you can figure out when he's going to come, you just made a liar what he said. And Christ doesn't lie. And if you're okay, if you're right with God, you shouldn't worry about it. You shouldn't worry about it. Isaiah 30:18. Yet the Lord longs to be gracious to you. Therefore he will rise up to show you compassion. The Lord is the God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. Again, that's a little prophetic. Waiting for who? Some will say God, I say Jesus. You know, there's, in the Bible, you cannot find the word rapture. We come from that word because in this verse that I just quoted for you, I will come as a thief in the night, will not know the time or the place. And there'll be two in the bed and one will remain. There'll be two in the field and one remains. Okay, that's the rapture. And that's where I think some people get really frightened. So if you're frightened of the rapture, you're not right with God yet. Because you shouldn't worry. I don't worry. If he comes now, okay. If he never comes in my lifetime, that's okay too. And see, you can do this. You can take what's happening today and say it's in the last days. How many centuries has that been said since Christ left? Why do we keep trying to figure out when he's coming? Let it go. Let it go. Romans 5:8, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's a short verse with a lot of power behind it. Christ came before we even knew him. Christ died on a cross even though we don't deserve it. But as I said before, and it seems like people don't get this concept, we did not deserve him to be on a cross, but by his actions, he demonstrated that we have a value to God. He wouldn't stayed on the cross if we weren't valuable to God. So quit getting out of this, I'm the worst sinner ever. Quit trying to take sin and make it one's worse than the other, because you can't do that. Sin is sin is sin. And sin's definition is basically anything that removes you from the grace of God. Now think about it. If God doesn't, put up sins on top of each other like we do, I've heard this growing up. I've heard it in the ministry. Well, at least I'm not as bad as... And when I said that, I remember because Carrie says this too. When you point at your finger, you have three pointing back at you. You should really reconsider when you say, oh, I'm glad I'm not as bad as fill in the blank. See, if you take God and make him this entity that just is mad all the time, there's no joy, then you don't understand God. You really don't. Most of you know Teddy Bridgewater. He played for the University of Louisville. He started out at the Vikings and had a very unbelievable thing happen, and he wasn't even hit, but it blew his knee completely out. So they took him off the roster. He's now in the New Orleans Saints. And of course, Drew Brees is hurt, so he fell down. They won again. There's a quote about him that he said. And he said this, and I'll paraphrase because I can't remember it exactly the way it goes. But he said, football is not my major thing. He said, I feel full of God's grace. And I smile all the time to demonstrate that God is for us all. That's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful, somebody that plays in the NFL. And I think how, here's this young man who gets it. He does. He can't play football forever. He knows that. Will he want to? Yes. Would I want to put shoulder pads on and get in the field again? Yes. Would that be scary? Absolutely scary. But he understands that's not the major focus. The major focus is he's blessed by God to play this game and make money from it, a lot of money. But that's not why he smiles. It's not his bank account. It's how he can demonstrate the love of God to other people. When Teddy Bridgewater gets hit, he usually tells the guy that hit him, good job. He also, they never show this, on television. They go away from it. He does the prayer after the game. Has to do the prayer when all the members from both teams come. That's pretty amazing. 1 John 4, 9, 11. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. Dear friends, since God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. That's what God is not done with us yet. Excuse me. And because of that, I know God's not done with us. It's this amazing love that he gives to us on a daily basis. I don't say this out loud, but how many of you do pray every day? Okay, that's pretty good. How many of you get upset when a prayer is not answered right away? I'm reminded that if his Son died on a cross because I have value, I should trust God in giving me what I need. Not what I want. There's a difference. God will give me what I need when it's the right time. Does that bug me? Yes. But I have to be reminded that God is not a fast food joint. But if you pray continually about what is happening in your life and you want it to change, be amazed at how it will change at the right time. It may not be when you think it's going to be, but it happens. My prayer, even though I wasn't a minister at the time, was when I had the girls by myself that I would meet somebody that would help me raise them. Because I knew when they got a certain age, I wouldn't know what the heck to do. And he did. Not as fast as I thought he was going to, but he did. See, if you're not careful, you won't see God's grace in your life. If you're not careful, you're going to miss that he's not done with you yet. And that's saddening to think that. Go and kind of revisit your life up to this point and see if you really can understand when God was there, helping you through tough situations, helping you handle a loss in your life. Maybe there was this job you wanted, and you didn't get it. But guess what? You got something better. God took it away and gave you something better. And when you pray, pray with joy in your heart. Because I believe when we have joy in our heart, we feel God more. Because that's what he wants us to have. Remember the acronym for joy is Jesus overwhelms you. So if you have that in your heart and mind, it's unlimited what can happen. You know the old saying, you're your worst enemy? That's absolutely true. God's knocking at your heart and you're going, oh, no, I don't know. I don't know. Let me share why I believe that God is never done with us yet. When he called my brother home, I was ready to leave the ministry. I was so mad. Because the words I heard when I was called is, if you follow me, everything will be okay. That ain't okay, people. I'm the older brother. He's not supposed to go before me. But you know what I learned as time went on? Because the pain never goes away. I hate when people say, oh, you'll be over it. Are you serious? No. You're never over it. It's just the pain gets a little bit dull and you can handle it. But if you close your eyes and think of a good time you had with that person, they're right there. In celebration of life services, known as funeral services, I always say the greatest gift God gives us is the ability to close our eyes and remember. I call that resurrection on earth. It's right there. You can even hear their voice. If you're doing something like cooking, you can smell the food. I mean, it's there. It gets me through. But probably the most powerful thing that I really realized, and that's why, and I keep hounding a little bit with this, is my prayer to God was he would heal my brother. He did. It just wasn't the way I wanted it to be. That's when you know God has love. And from his mouth before he died, he told me something. And I know it's for me. He said, bro, I see the face of God and we win. I see the face of God and we win. So don't ever tell me there's not a God. Don't ever tell me there's no God. And you yourself, it's okay to doubt. That's what doubting Thomas did. Blessed are those who have not seen but yet believe. That's you. At that moment, at that time, Jesus elevated you above his own disciples. He did. Blessed are those who have not seen but yet believe. Doubting Thomas had to see. He thought those guys were drunk when they said that Jesus came. And then when he appeared again, Thomas, put your hand on my side. And then he said, Lord, Lord. And that's when Jesus came back. 2 Corinthians 1:20, for all the promises of God find their yes in him. That is why it is through him that we utter our amen to the glory, for his glory. It is through him that our life has an amen to it. A good one, by the way. 2 Peter 1:4, by which he was granted to us his precious and very great promises, so that through them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped from the corruption that is in the world because of sinful desires. Has granted to us his precious and very great promises. We as humans don't keep our promises, but God does. And that's what we need to hang on to. That's what we need to hang on to. Finally, 1 John 4:16. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love. And whoever abides in love abides in God. And God abides in him. So how can we uplift ourselves, if you will? How can we get out of this thing that you pull yourself up by your bootstraps nonsense? Is thank God every single day that he loves me no matter what. There's no human here that can say they can do that. You can't. That's just our human existence. But God in his infinite wisdom, God in his love, God in his caring for each one of us is saying to you today, I'm not done with you yet. Amen.